Good morning to all of you. Thank you for attending to this webinar. First, a practical check to make sure you all can hear us loud and clear and that you see the screen of the webinar. So in your webinar, you see a panel, a question panel, where you can post questions or remarks. If some of the participants could just post a message to make sure that you can hear us. So I'll wait a couple of seconds. Yeah, and that seems clear. Thank you for attending this webinar. Good morning. I'm here with Jean-François Dirks. My name is Edwin Willems. We are in the same virtual room, not the same physical room, of course, because of the confinement. I hope you and your family are all well, in good health. So practically, if you have questions in the webinar, you see a panel to your right where you can post questions. So feel free to do so, and we will take some time at the end of the webinar to address the questions we get throughout the webinar. But let me first take a few minutes to put the webinar in context. So Jean-François, thank you for the slide. So our mantra at Agilos is about turning data into a strategic asset. So what we basically do is help companies on their BI journey. And with BI journey, we mention the whole, or we address the whole data supply chain. So going from data up to analytics to insights. So starting with the data integration, this includes change data capture, modern data warehouse automation, data preparation, and so on. So in this domain, we commercialize and we support technologies such as Qlik Attunity, a time extender, data catalyst. Then you have the analytics part, and I'm losing my screen. So Jean-François, if I can have the previous slide back. Thank you. The analytics part, this is about visualization and analytics. So basically dashboard and reporting technology. And here we support technologies such as Qlik and Power BI. And then finally, it's about turning the insights you get in using these analytics into valuable insights and actions that help you drive the digital transformation in your company. Now, as a company, we do not only provide the technology, but especially also the services to make it work, including helping you with the architecture of this data supply chain up to the custom development of BI solutions. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the webinars we are organizing over the next few weeks is really to share our vision, our knowledge, and also our best practices in those different domains. Now, some of the webinars are rather specific, such as the one today, which is around version control and multi-developer management in a Qlik environment. Some others are more product focused, such as the one on Thursday, around the latest features of Qlik Sense and how it brings augmented intelligence to the user. Now, some other, such as the one next week, Analytics in 2020, is broader, is about architecting the whole data supply chain and helping you in the decision whether or not a data warehouse help you in the context of your BI strategy. So we have a pretty good mix of product focused, but also more general webinars. So feel free to register for some of the other webinars, and you can find the registration links on our website. So the reason for companies to choose BI strategically, I think that is obvious. You want to optimize your business, you want to be more competitive than your competitors, beat your competitors, or just get better insights into the dynamics of your business. Now, a reliable BI solution plays a crucial role in this. And we think there are three elements that determine BI's success for a business. It's about innovation, a good data governance, and application governance. So let's start with the innovation. If we are looking at Qlik, well, the associative engine and the working in-memory architecture makes QlikView and Qlik Sense, and the mostly used product today is Qlik Sense, but QlikView is using a similar associative engine, where it allows users to quickly analyze large amounts of data and get deep insights in your business. So that's the innovative aspect. Secondly, data governance helps you make sure to have to use the data in a reliable way. So as a company in your BI strategy, you need to have a decent data governance strategy covering who can access which data, covering security, who can view which data, having one version of the truth, and so on. Business intelligence without a good data governance strategy is just dangerous. Now, the third component is what many companies do not realize. And that is, if I can have the next slide, Jean-Francois, that is that the application is at least as important as the data. So application governance, it helps to roll out better applications to business users faster and with less errors. So there's really three components. It's making your applications better, it's rolling them out to business users faster and with less errors. Now, as soon as you are developing applications in Qlik with more than one developer, next slide please, you have an increased exposure to errors in the development of your applications, the testing, and the deployment of the right applications to your end users. And that is where we see solutions such as Platform Manager from Infor.bi come into play. So this is really about development collaboration, about providing version control and deployment for Qlik Sense applications. So Jean-Francois, I now hand over to you.
Okay, thank you, Edwin. I hope you can all hear me fine. I'll just share my screen again because I see that the share has gone.
And we lost our screen, so
yes. Just a second. I lost my screen sharing for some. Oh, okay, there it is.
So Jean-Francois, you're a presenter, and now we see your screen back.
Yes. So you can hear me, Edwin?
But we can't hear you.
Okay, you cannot hear me?
Yeah, now we can. Thanks.
Okay. So I'm going now to show you a little bit how this application governance can be applied in real life using the Infor.bi solution. So for that, when we talk about application governance, a very important thing, and that's what you see here with multi-development, so multiple people working on the same application, is that you give different roles to different people in your specific projects and applications. So here we'll just take a few roles that are very recognizable, and we will use them throughout this presentation. So the first role would be a developer role. So we take here a developer person. It's a person who will be responsible for managing the data sources, to build application, to do some development, to transform the data, to create visuals in the application, and also to implement specific requests from the business. So if the business wants to see a specific report, a specific dashboard, or wants to achieve for a specific purpose to get information brought to a specific place or to a specific person, he will be responsible to implement that requirement. So that's the developer, the first role. Now, of course, you can have many developers, and so these developers need to be managed. And for that, we have a project manager. So that's the person who is responsible for and accountable for the project success. It's also the person who understands the different product statuses, who can manage all the developers, and who will be responsible to put something into production. That's what we call the promotion to production. And then, of course, well, the finality of all these projects is that the system is going to be used by business users. So the business user has a different role. He needs to, or she in this case, needs to formulate the actual needs, and also is responsible for the validation. Once the developer has built something, we need to be sure that the business people can validate this, and of course be the final user of the application. So these different roles needs also different ways to interact with the project, and that's exactly what we want to do with the application governance, is to make sure that all of these people have the right way, the right tool to interact with the project at the different stages. Now, let me take a few examples, and then I will demonstrate how this can be done. First of all, it's important, of course, if we want to deploy a project, that we set up the right architecture. Meaning that, well, if we have multiple people that need to access the different environments, we want to promote from development to test, or maybe use a sandbox so that we can try out some stuff without impacting the business. We want to be sure that we can certify the data before it goes all the way down to production. So for these things, it's important, of course, to define a correct environment, and this environment will be supported by Infor.BI, but also more tactically, that when we move something from development to test, and from test to production, we will have different versions of the solution, but it needs to always have the same structure. This is something that you often apply when you set up methodology using Qlik, is that you create specific folders, specific subfolders, and that you always create the same structure to manage your projects. And to be able to do that, of course, you want to make sure that the structure is the same in development, in test, in production, and so on. And for that, well, actually, Infor.BI allows you to create those structures and to copy them over from one place to another. So let me show that quickly, how that looks like. So if we go to the browser, actually, this is the Infor.BI interface. So as a person who is responsible for the configuration of the system, I can set up a development environment. You see that you have a little development icon here. When I click on this icon, I can view all my development environments. And actually, the way these development environments are structured, I can actually directly import the folder structure from one place to another, so that I can ensure that I have a kind of template structure that I can push from development to test to production. So the way it works is that it's going to take the structure of a specific folder that you have, you could have locally on your PC, or that is distributed on a shared folder, and you're going to import it on the different places where you need to move your projects. So in this case, for instance, my demo environment, and also maybe push it into production, and so on. So that's what I wanted to illustrate, is that you can actually create these structures, and you can also create them for development, but you can do the same. If you look here, you also have the promotion environment, and also in the promotion environment, you will have the ability to create exactly the same structure than the one that we have seen before. So you get the same structure here than the one that you have here in development. So this will allow you to mimic to ensure that you always have the same structure. Good. So that was a first point. So we want to make sure that the structure is automatically configured everywhere. Now, another thing, because we are talking about roles, is that you want to make sure that the different roles are well assigned to the right person. So the developer will be able to work in the development environment, but maybe the project manager can also access the development environment and push things into acceptance. The end user can access the acceptance environment and can actually validate what he sees. And then the project manager is again responsible to push it into production. So each role has a different access need. And so for that, you need, of course, to manage roles and associate the right people to the roles. And that again, in for BI, you have that capability to manage all these roles. So you have a whole configuration and administration section here in which you can manage all the different users and actually apply the different permission to every user, so that you know what type of role they are using, but also not only what type of role they are using, but also what part of the environment they can access. So they can configure the system, or they have access specifically to the development environment, or even to the promotion. So you see that depending on the user role, you can actually apply different profiles. That's what you have in the system. Once you have the system in place, and you set up the security so that you ensure that people cannot access production data if they are a developer, for instance, or that people that are end users cannot access the development in progress, because they don't need to be confused about that. So you can, once you manage, you set that up, you ensure that people can all access the system with the right role and information. Good. Let's now dig into actually how a project is going to be executed. So usually when an end user define all his requirements, these requirements will come into a project plan with all different steps or little things that needs to be realized. Typically, if you are working with an agile method, it will be split into small sprints that need to be executed and that need to be developed. And for each development step, actually, what you have is that you have a specific workflow to follow. So you start with the requirement. Once you have your requirements, you start to implement the requirement in Qlik Sense or in QlikView. It will work with both Qlik and interfaces. And once you finished the implementation, you want to work on the next step. So this workflow is actually quite regular. So you start to pick up one requirement, you work it out, and then you move to the next. So for that, what you want is you want to have a tool that supports this workflow, that can ensure that it knows at all times when a specific developer is working on a specific project requirements. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pick one of these requirements, and then we're going to implement them directly in the part of the project that needs to be adapted. It could be one specific QlikView document in this case. It could be a specific sheet in a Qlik Sense sheet. It could be the script that needs to be adapted, and so on. So it could be the script that needs to be changed, so you do the implementation. But for that, the first thing you do is you're going to check out into the system to let everyone know that you are actually working on that part. So let me show you how that looks like in for BI. So let's say, for instance, I would like to make a modification here into my development environment. So I'm going to the development environment, and I want to, for instance, modify, in this case, a QlikView file that is here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to right-click on this, and I'm going to edit or check out. So you can do two things. If you do a checkout, you just notify that you're going to work on this. The nice thing is that we want to do things in an easy workflow. So if I want to modify this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit it directly. By editing this, I can actually I will automatically open the application from this place. So it will open it here in this case in QlikView. I can make a modification, and you see here that this specific file is going to be edited. Has been checked out today at 11:29 by myself. So everyone who connects to the system knows that I am working on it. Other people will not be allowed to work at the same time, and we will see later on that because this is QlikView, if you will see later on in Qlik Sense that it will even be possible to work with multiple people on the same dashboard. But here, because I'm in QlikView, I want to be sure that when I make a change, it's not getting overwritten by someone else. So let's show here, for instance, that I make a small modification. So here I have a Qlik a chart, a bar chart. So I want to modify this chart and say, for instance, because it's a time chart, it might be more interesting to change to a line chart so that it's more easy to read. Maybe I want also to make a change into the script. So I'll open the script window, and I want to make a change here. For instance, I want to change the comma separator and the point separator, and maybe I will add another data line here. So I just an example, I'm making a change. Okay, so I made a change in the script. I made a change here in the chart. I could make a change also in the expression of the chart. So if I go here to the expression and I made a change here, I go here, sales divided by currency. I want to divide this by 2. Okay, I made a change in the expression. So I made several changes. Now that I finished, I just have to save this, save my work. And once it's saved, I can actually check in again. So I can say, now I want to check in what I have modified. And by doing the check-in, I can say I modified the chart and some script stuff. Okay, not very nice documentation, but these are things that you can do. And I can then publish it again to the system. So what happens now is that it is actually processing what I did. And once it's finished processing, you see that it's now not checked out anymore. And I can click here and I can see that this application has been checked out at 11:31, so had been modified, and we created a new version of this application. I can see the full history. If I go here to the analysis, I can look at the full life cycle of this item. So you see when it has been checked in, when it has been checked out, when someone did a modification. Here you see the comment that I added. I modified the chart and some script, so you can see exactly what has happened with this specific item over time. So this will allow me to ensure that you always know who is working on what and what happens on a specific item. Good. Let's move back to the presentation. So we did a checkout and a check-in, but now you have seen that I did a change, and that can be another challenge if you want to manage changes. Well, the first developer has made a change, but this person is gone, is not available anymore. But there is another developer who gets assigned to the project. So the project manager assigns it to another developer. But this other developer did not work on that project before, or did not work on that specific part. And so, well, actually, he needs to know what did the previous developer do, what did he change, what still needs to be done. So he needs to know, to understand what has changed in the application. And again, this is something you can do. So you want to be able to view all the changes that have been made to all the project files that you have in your project by comparing them to the previous versions. So this is what we call difference analysis. So let me again go back here to show you what we are talking about. Remember that we did a change here in the application. So I want now to compare this version of the application with the previous version. I can compare it to any version. So I can, for instance, look at all the changes since the beginning. But now I'm interested in the latest changes. So I'm checking the last 2 ones, and I want to view the difference. So I asked the system to analyze what is the difference between those 2 applications. And it's actually going to show me all the changes that happened in this application. So what you see here, remember I added 1,000 separator, I changed the 1,000 separator and point into commas. So you see directly that those 2 lines were changed in the script. If I look further, I see that my bar chart has been changed into a line chart, so I can visualize what the change was. Of course, that means also that the graph mode has been changed from bar to line. I did a modification on some expression definition, so you will see also the differences in the expression. So I divided by 2. You see that it shows me exactly which expression has changed and has been divided by 2 and so on. So you will see in that way, you will see all the differences that are between 2 applications. That can be very convenient also to understand why an application is behaving differently than before. It says, why is this number different? I want to see what has changed. You just compare the 2 versions and it will show you exactly what has changed in a nutshell. Very easy to do with this application. So that's about the visual difference analysis. So let's go back to the presentation. So let's now go a bit further, and you have a whole project, and the end user has tested the report and has found that there are inconsistencies in the data. So apparently the data is not up to date. So now you want to understand why the data that is shown there is not up to date. So to know that, of course, you need to know where the data comes from, when it has been updated, and so on. So there are many files within a project. You can have QVD files that are loaded by another program, and then you can have text files and Excel files that are loaded at a different time, and then everything comes together into a project. So what you want to know is what is the relation between all those files. So to do that, well, actually, you want to ask to look at the association between the different objects, and also be able to view in a nutshell what are the different relations between all those files. So again, let me show you that into the application here. So if we go into a QlikView project here, for instance, I have it works, of course, also with Qlik Sense, where you have different layers, extraction layer, conversion layer, visualization layer, and you want to know from the end report here, what are all the files that on which this report is based. So I'm going to go to the data lineage visualization, and I can see at all time that this report is based on 2 QVD files and an Excel file, that this QVD file is loaded using that specific Qlik application. This Qlik application is sources based on a binary load of this application combined with an XML file, and this application gets loaded based on 2 text files and a QVD file. And if you want to know, is this QVD file used elsewhere, you can again isolate some specific elements and directly see for that specific element, this XML, where else is it used? You see that this one is creating another QVD, and where is this QVD used, and so on. So you can navigate inside the different lineage reports. Of course, all this information is also stored in a database. So if you want to do associative navigation and analysis using Qlik, based on this data, it will also be possible. Good. Let me go back to the presentation because I have a few other things to show. You see that you can have a lot of project files that are actually deployed, well, it could be that because business changes, your end users is telling you, well, I want to change the definition of my sales KPI. So could you please modify this definition, and the sales should now be calculated in a different way, taking into account more discount, for instance. Well, of course, then the project manager will ask the developer to say, well, can you update all the formulas and calculation behind this KPI? Well, then the developer needs to search throughout all the project where this KPI has been defined. It could be somewhere in the script, it could be somewhere in a dashboard, in an expression that is defined manually. So you have to find back all these occurrences of the sales KPI. Now, for that, you can use global search. The global search will allow you to search through all the content of your project at the same time. So let me again show you. So you search for one specific word and it will show you where it will find it in the system. So let's go back here and show you how this happens in for BI. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do to analyze what is happening in my projects, and I'm going to search throughout everything where, for instance, sales is used. And by clicking that, it will show me all the different files in which you will have sales. So for instance, here I have 2 occurrences of sales in this one, and I can click on it. I will see where it is used. It can be used in a specific title of a chart. It can be used in a calculation. It can be used somewhere in a different object. It can be used in the script, and so on. So you will find back all the occurrences. Of course, I took here a word that is used a lot to show you that it can find it a bit everywhere, but it will allow you to find back. Of course, if you have some very specific terms, it will search, and it will you will avoid to have to search through the script, through the application, through all the related files. You will find everything in the same screen. So that's the global search, helping you to find back everything you need. Another requirement would be to, well, when you have finished the development, so the developer has finished the application, it's now ready to be tested. Now, of course, before it is put into production, you want to make sure that the business users validate the application so that they check the numbers, they see that everything is fine. So there will be a checklist, check if the data is between that number and that number, if that number is coherent, and so on and so on. So it needs to be able to go through a checklist. And that's what the project manager will want to do, is how can I make sure that my business user are actually doing the testing, are actually validating the data, so that after that I can move it to a production environment. And here we're talking about different things. One of the things is that you want to ensure that you can move a whole project from development to test and from test to production. That's what we call release management. So we're going to group a lot of files together and make one release that we're going to publish. And another thing is that you want to certify the release that you published. So I published an application, and I want to make sure that the end user actually certifies that the data is correct before I actually publish the application. So let me show you how that goes. So we are in the system. One of the things is the release management will allow you to promote the data from one place to another. So how does that work? Well, actually, I will be able to go from one environment to the other. Let me first go to the development, and I'm going to group a set of files as one release. So if we take back, for instance, our application that we see here, in which I have multiple files. Well, actually, I could group those files. Let me select multiple files, for instance, and I want to make this as one single release. So I'm going to create a release, and this release will group everything together. So all these files should be added together, and it will also include, if I do the same, for instance, if I want to create a release here I have my application. Remember, we had a visual application. So I want to create a release of this one. Well, actually, the system, because it knows that this report depends on those specific files that on their turn depend on those other specific files, it will group together all the files that are going together in one single release. So if I create a release like this, it will bring the data together, and it will then, in that case, generate the release that you see here, which is called the release view. So it's going to put together within all my files a specific release. So if I look at the application file on which I click, it will generate a release. Here you see, for instance, a global release. and I can see all the different files that are actually behind, that are actually available. So these are the different release instances, but if I click here on the items, the item component, you will see that all the files, I have the text files, the QlikView files, the Excel files, the XML files, all these files are belonging together into a specific release. And I can apply versioning. So once I have a release that is ready, I can actually assign a version to the different files of this release. And once these versions are assigned, I can then promote this this release to the next level. So this promotion will allow me to move. Let me show you that. To move, for instance, here from my acceptance environment towards my production environment, or from my development towards the acceptance. So why is the promotion environment then separated from the development environment? Well, that's exactly to manage what you have also in the for the end user, which has a different role. The end user wants to be able to validate an existing application or an existing release, and to be able to validate that, if we take, for instance, the application that you see here. So we go back here to the specific application that you see here. You see that you have a checklist here for validation. What is this checklist? If I click on this as an end user, I will have a checklist in which of all the things that I need to test. And as long as I did not validate every of these elements, it will show in progress. So what I can do is I can say, are all the dashboards operational? Yes, they are. Are those specific KPI? Yes, they are. And you see, as long as I click on the green there, you will see that the final release will be approved. If one of those steps is not, are the numbers correct? No, they are not. Then the release will be rejected. That means that it can go back towards development, and that you will know exactly what is going wrong here. Here, of course, it's a very high-level checklist, but you can create a more global checklist by a more detailed checklist by specifying exactly what needs to be checked in a dashboard. So again, this will allow you to validate what is happening on the system and make sure that the data that is published can actually be used in production. Now, a few last things that are specific for Qlik Sense. I said in the beginning that you could have multiple developers that want to work on the same Qlik Sense application, but on different sheets. Now, this is made possible with Infor.BI, because when you work with Infor.BI, you can actually check in with multiple people. And when you do that, well, actually, you don't need to give access first to one user and then to another user. So what you will have is that each user, so you have here two different users, and each user will see will have in his own workspace the ability to work on specific sheets, different sheets, but the result, when we do a check-in again, the result will be merged into one single application. Of course, you need to make sure that you're not working on the same sheet, but you can work with multiple developers on different sheets within the same application, because they are separate objects. This is why this is only possible with Qlik Sense, because with QlikView, you have one single QlikView file, so we cannot do that. But with Qlik Sense, it allows you to have multiple developers working on the same environment. And the last thing that you have with Qlik Sense, so that can be a pain, and it's very important for application governance, are the extensions. You know that when you deploy Qlik Sense, there are 5 new versions of Qlik Sense every year. So that means that when you move to a new version of Qlik Sense, you're never sure that a specific extension is going to work or not in the new version. Of course, if you use the extensions that are validated by Qlik, you can make sure that they work. Now let's assume that you're developing your own extension, and now you go to the next version, you see that there is a problem with that extension that you previously developed, so you want to remove it from your project. Now, how can you find out which application is using which extension? It's very difficult to do that in Qlik Sense. You need to open every application and so on. Well, in Infor.BI, you will be able to do that easily. So let me go out of this, and we go back here to the development environment. If I go here in the developer environment, you see that next to the development, you also have server items. And the server items will show you all the extensions, and it's the same for the mashups and the widgets. So it will show you all the extensions that are actually published on the Qlik Sense server. But more than that, you will be able to manage multiple versions of the same extension and go and roll back to the previous version. That can be very useful if you have a problem. And you will also be able to see what are all the different applications that are actually using this extension. So you know that this extension is used by that specific application. If I take the horizontal bar, it will be used by that specific application. If I take this extension, I know that it's used by those different applications. So the system will help me to understand where extensions are used within my application and to manage the versions of those extensions. Another added value that you have by using the Infor BI solution. Good, so that's the extension management part. Well, I think I showed you a lot. We can open up now for some questions. But to conclude, so Infor BI will allow you to do application governance by allowing multiple developers to work on the same environment, by managing multiple releases and versioning of these releases. I show you also that you can assign a version number. I didn't go into detail into the version assignment, but you can really go to, all the way down to a version, a subversion, and so on. So you can really organize all your versions of each object that you have inside your project, and then you can also move from one environment to another. So let's open a little to questions. So Edwin, I don't know if you received some questions on the chat that need to be answered.
Yeah, I did. So, and in the meantime, if you have other questions, please don't hesitate to post them on the chat board. So I got a few questions on licensing. So I think that's for me. So people are asking whether it uses the same licensing model as Qlik. Well, to that, the answer is that Infor BI, they offer basically two models for the licensing, which is either a perpetual or a subscription model. So that means that you can buy a license and then pay yearly maintenance for new versions and support, or you can go to a subscription model where you have an annual fee for using the product. So they do have a starter pack in which you have a number of developers and promoters included, plus a couple of connectors to your BI environment, Qlik Sense, QlikView, and so on, production development, and so on. And then you can buy extra developers or extra promoters if you have a larger environment. So they have pretty much flexibility in the type of licensing model they support. Another question I got, Jean-François, is on extensions. So you were talking about extensions. So people say, well, Qlik has extensions that are delivered with Qlik Sense, but what about other extensions like the ones of Vislib?
Yeah, so the extension management will cover all the extension that you deploy to your server. So that means that both the Vislib extensions, the extension that are delivered in the packs with Qlik, but also extensions that you might develop yourself. If you have Java developers, you will be able to do versioning of those extensions and ensure that you have compatibility from one version to another. So it will really help you to organize and to manage all your extensions in the same way as it will help you to organize and manage any file that is actually linked to your project. So it could be text files, Excel files, XML files, configuration files, whatever. But the extensions are also often a pain to manage, so that the Infor BI will help you to manage that in an efficient way.
Okay, thank you, Jean-François. Another question we got is, how can Infor.BI keep up with all those Qlik Sense versions? Well, to that we can say that they are a technology partner of Qlik, which means that Infor.BI, they do get early access to new versions before they come out, before they are published. So they receive alpha, beta versions and so on, which means that as a technology partner of Qlik, they can make sure that from the moment that Qlik comes out with a new Qlik Sense version, they have their technology, so platform manager in their case, adapted to the new version of Qlik Sense, so that as a user, you don't have to wait for installing, for going to new versions of Qlik Sense. Then I got one question for you, Jean-Francois, which is on support of a mixed environment QlikView, Qlik Sense. So we have a couple of customers who are in the phase of migrating from QlikView to Qlik Sense, and they ask if they can mix them in one platform manager environment, and how a platform manager can help them in that migration.
Yeah, so that's indeed a very good question, because one of the good things with Platform Manager is that it actually uses connectors to connect to different servers. So that means it can connect to a Qlik Sense server on one side and to a QlikView server, or even more than one on another side. So it will help you actually to bring together in one development environment, in one I would say development interface. It can be the gateway for all your developers to both Qlik Sense and QlikView. And why is that very interesting also if you want to migrate from QlikView to Qlik Sense? Well, often when you are in the process of migrating from QlikView to Qlik Sense, you will often use the same configuration files, the same QVD files for both QlikView and Qlik Sense. And because here you can manage the versions, that you can ensure also the dependencies between the different objects, you will be able to view these dependencies both for QlikView and Qlik Sense, and so we'll be able to support a transition phase from QlikView towards Qlik Sense. They can coexist. You can organize, for instance, a development folder for QlikView, another one for Qlik Sense, or you can mix them depending on, for instance, different departments. You could have a department that is already in Qlik Sense, another one in QlikView. So all these things can be organized because you have this centralized development interface.
Okay, thank you, Jean-Francois. If you have more questions, please post them. You can contact us afterwards as well. We got a couple of really very specific questions on technical ones and pricing ones. So we'll get back to the people who asked those. I see another one coming in. When you prepare and adapt extensions to a planned new release of Qlik based on a beta version, is it possible to set up a day and time upfront for the publication for new versions of the extension?
So the extension management and the publication can be put at a later stage. If I understand well, the question is that you would like to planify, to do a planification of deployments. Is that correct?
Yeah. So
well, of course.
Yeah, if you want to prepare for a new release of Qlik based on a beta version.
Yeah. So as we said in the beginning, you can have multiple environments. So you would have your development and test environment. You would have a sandbox in which you can test your beta version or your new versions, and you can actually validate also your development, because you can move the content from your development environment towards the beta to ensure that what has been developed before is going to work in the beta environment. And by the fact that you can move around all the content from one environment to another, it will help you to ensure that the release is ready to be pushed. And because you can group also everything together, you can push them as one release to the next version at a certain date. So that, for instance, you say we will do a release at a specific date, like in 10 days. That's when we plan to deploy. And when we are ready, when everything is validated, we can push everything at the same time towards the new environment. I don't know if it answered the question.
Pre-schedule like a new version to be published on the 1st of May, for instance.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But before the 1st of May, for instance, you could have some certain business user already accessing it in order to validate, for instance, before it's put into production officially on the 2nd of May.
Okay, great. Okay, if there are no further questions, so we can finish in time. We have a couple of seconds left. So thank you all for participating. Don't hesitate to get back to us if you have more questions on either technical or commercial license-wise and so on. And I would like to close by just saying, please make sure to stay safe and stay healthy. Bye and have a good day.
Thank you very much.